I don't think that can be sufficiently overstated. This is a very, very significant moment, and one that will go down in the annals of history here in New York and at the United Nations. Now, the story of the last hour is that the resolution passed. I'll tell you what the numbers were in just a second. It's a resolution very similar to the one that did not pass on Friday, but this one's been drafted by the 10 non-permanent members of the Security Council, and it calls for an immediate ceasefire and the unconditional release of hostages and the unrestricted delivery of aid to Gaza. Now, what's important about this is that when the Security Council votes on these resolutions, it is international law and it is binding on all members of the United Nations. So Israel is going to have to pay attention to this. Now, let me come back to that in just a second, because before the vote was passed, within the last 20 minutes or so, there was an amendment that was tabled by the Russians. The ambassador is called Vitaly Nebenzia, and he said that he was unhappy about the word permanent being replaced by what he called a weaker word in this resolution. And remember, when it comes to writing international law, it all comes down to individual words in the end. So the Russians proposed an oral amendment, putting back in place a word that was there over the weekend, a permanent ceasefire. Anyway, they voted on that, and it was not adopted. 3 in favor, 1 against, and 11 abstentions. And then they came to the vote on the resolution. This is the historic moment that I'm now talking about. This is the one that we will be talking about for a very long time. And in the end, 14 members of the Council voted in favor. Nobody vetoed. That's very important. Nobody vetoed, okay? And there was 1 abstention. And the abstention was the United States. And that is because the United States is unhappy about the fact that Hamas is not sufficiently condemned within this document. Nonetheless, sufficient members voted in favor. It has passed. It is international law. Now, the ambassador representing Algeria said that the United Nations Security Council was finally, he said, shouldering its responsibility. And the Security Council message and the international community message to the people of Gaza is that we did not abandon you. And he said that this is only the beginning, which indeed it is. Now, this brings us on to the next stage here. What's going to happen next? I'm pretty sure that Antonio Guterres, who is, as you know, the Secretary General of the United Nations, has just put out a tweet, which I saw flashing by on my phone just now, saying that it's important that this resolution must be implemented. And presumably it will be. Now, as you remember, there was a slight delay, 25-minute delay before we got to today's meeting in which this vote has happened. And Israeli media is reporting that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, was threatening to pull the delegation, which is in Washington, D.C. right now, if America didn't veto this bill. Well, America didn't veto this bill. It abstained. So now we wait to see what happens to the defense minister and his team who are in Washington, D.C., who were going to Washington to explain all the details regarding a possible attack on Rafah. And this meeting continues finally in New York. We're going to hear from all members of the Council, including special guests there today, who are the Israeli delegation, the Palestinians, and the Yemenis, who represent the 22 Arab nations in the world.